their way through it a little bit.
Hi, I'm Jackie Reid and welcome to Lethal's Last Word. It's the preliminary finals and we have two games to look at. First up, it's the Friday night blockbuster between Hawthorn and Geelong at the MCG. Hawthorn has had the week off, but Lee, we all know the recent history between these two sides. The Cats have won the last 11 games.
Amazing. They've both been really good teams throughout that era, but the 11 times, and Hawthorn have been favourite 9 times, and they will be again tomorrow night, but somehow or other, Geelong just find a way to beat them, and they've been close games. It's not as if Geelong have been creaming Hawthorn, but they always find a way to win, as they have in the 2 games this year. Now, the ins and outs, clearly, when you see the ins for Hawthorn and Franklin Rioli after they demolished the Swans 2 weeks ago, they're fantastic ins. And Chapman's going to be a significant out, I think. He kicked 4 goals last weekend. Corey Enright is a really big out. And Taylor Hunt, he's normally the player they use in a close checking role. So they've decided to go without that type of player this week, the Cats.
A couple of key players in this clash are the inspirational skippers from both sides. This is their recent form when the respective teams have met.
Well, you're trying to search for reasons why Geelong keep winning. And when you look at those numbers, we've used dream team averages just as a benchmark of how well they played in the game. And what we see really, if you've got a chance to really examine the numbers, that against Geelong, Hodge doesn't play as well as he normally does. He's normally below average. Whereas when Selwood plays against Hawthorn, he's normally above average. So clearly tomorrow night, in terms of turning the game, then Hodge has to be really influential. A couple of times he hasn't been there, so you can't be influential if you're not there. But actually, the Hodge inspiration is what Hawthorn need to break this sequence.
Will come the centre bounce at 7.50. I mean, where do you play Hodge if you're the coach?
Yeah, I think he's in the back half. I think you'd be playing him in the back 6 because I think Mitchell and Sewell are still the anchor points in the centre of the ground. You can't play them all in there, but I reckon if they need him in the stoppage area, the Hodge can go in there. But so Geelong will be trying to make sure he can't play that defensive general role. But last time when he played the Swans, he played on Jesse White, so he virtually played centre half back. So he can do a lot of functions in there. But I reckon backline for Hodge, midfield for Selwood.
From inspiring leaders to a couple of creative stars, let's look closely at Sam Mitchell and Stevie J.
Well, they're the 2 players that I reckon you're most likely to want to tag from the opposition point of view. Well, Geelong, they didn't pick Taylor Hunt, so therefore they look like their midfield is going to go head-to-head with the Hawthorn midfield. But no doubt Liam Shields is the player for Hawthorn that often gets that kind of match-up. And I still think that Johnson is such a creative player. If he can play midfield and he charges into the forward line so he can get his 25 or 30 position and kick possessions and kick his 2 or 3 goals. So I think he's the player you have to shut down from Hawthorn's point of view.
Well, Sam Mitchell normally fires as well. It's an interesting fact that since the Kennett curse began, he's actually polled the most Brownlow votes despite losing.
Well, clearly he keeps playing well. He's one Hawthorn player that keeps playing well against Geelong, so they'll need that again tomorrow night.
One of the big draw cards for this game is Buddy Franklin, but Lee, his form against the Cats isn't that good.
Well, this is a little bit like the Hodge situation. We only look at the recent history, don't go back the 11 games, but just in the last 3 games played in 0-12, 0-13, he's kicked 1 goal, 2 goals. But normally Tom Lonergan takes the match up, and I think one interesting stat that I saw is that Roughhead, as we know, he won the Coleman medal. He's mainly playing deep forward. And Hawthorn kick a goal 51% of the time. That's one every second time they go to Roughhead, they kick a goal. So I see Franklin this week not playing as a forward 50 target. Use Roughhead, use Hale, use Gunston, use Bruce, and let him play as a running half forward, and that doesn't suit Lonergan. So I wouldn't be surprised that Andrew Mackie actually might get the Franklin matchup if he's up running as almost a running midfielder. So it's an interesting matchup how the Geelong defence. Enright being out, a gigantic plus for Hawthorn because I think he helps hold that defence together.
Well, what's your last word, Lee? Who's going to win this one?
Well, I've gone to Hawthorn. I reckon most of the last 11 games I'm going for them again. So I think the Hawks will go through to the grand final.
That's Lethal's last word on the huge preliminary final between Hawthorn and Geelong. In the second preliminary final, it's Fremantle hosting Sydney at Patterson Stadium. The home side will go in heavy favourites, but the Swans have won their last 4 matches at Patterson's, and the reigning premiers certainly aren't without a chance, are they, Lee?
That gives you a lot of hope too. When you've played well at the stadium, won the last 4 times, they've gone there, as you said, gives them a little bit more hope than probably the odds makers are giving this game going in.
Well, let's take a look at their recent head-to-head form, and they've played just the once this year.
And for the draw in Sydney, and Swans kicked 11-4 that day and Fremantle 9-16, so Fremantle had plenty of shots, so that was a good effort. Michael Johnson's in for Fremantle, All-Australian, so that's a really big in. McGlynn's always a good running half forward for the Swans, he's good. Mitchell, that's probably in and out about the same. Tippett, obviously, they are one of their very talls less. Tippett, of course, has been their main goal kicker recently.
Well, Matthew Pavlich has had an interrupted season, but 7 out of the top 8 Dockers scores this year have come when Pav has been in the side, despite the skipper only playing 10 games.
Yeah, very instructive numbers there. That clearly, when he's in the side, they score better because he's the player most likely to kick the multiple goals. You know, the 3, 4, 5 goals. He's a wonderful player, Pavlich. I reckon obviously had the Achilles tendon early in the year that kept him out, and he's only played his 10 games. But geez, he's a good mark. He's a good second effort player. He can snap a goal, and no, he's a really top quality forward. But it's, you know, there is the other players in that forward line that are the worker bee players, and you've got Ballantyne, you've got Main, you've got Walters, because they're so often outnumbered because they like to actually bolster their defence with an extra number. You really need hard chases, and Main's a really important player. He can kick his 2 or 3 goals, but he's chasing pressure. That group, and De Boer, you put that in as well, they work really hard in there.
Well, let's focus on 2 guys who can do the defensive roles for their teams, but through different tactics, the 2 Ryans, Crowley and O'Keefe.
Well, I don't think there's an obvious player for Crowley to play, and it could be Kennedy, it could be Jack, could be Hanbury, could be McVeigh. He played on Hanbury in that drawn game early in the year, and Hanbury had his 27 touches and 4 goals, so that was obviously a good matchup. So he'll take one of those. I wouldn't be surprised this week if he mainly takes Kennedy, because Kennedy is the anchor point, I think, of the Swans midfield. The other players can go in and out down there. Ryan O'Keefe, well, he could take anyone from Mundy to Barlow if he plays that midfield tagging role, but just they either look small or very big in their forward line, Sydney. So I wouldn't be surprised late in the game he drifted in there and played as he started his career as a hard-running, marking half forward. So I think there'll be big decisions to be made by Sydney. Do they actually use his ability to be a forward rather than the midfield tagging roles that he's made his own in recent years?
Now to the key matchup, and it's the ruck battle, which will be contested between Aaron Sandilands, Zach Clark and Shane Mumford and Mike Pike.
Well, no doubt these 2 teams have got the best duo of ruckmen compared to Hawthorn and Geelong. And Sandilands, well, he's unique because he is so big. When the ball, he doesn't take a whole lot of marks. I mean, he's big, but he doesn't get under the ball that well. Clark's a good jumping ruckman, but the fact is when Sandlin does the stoppages, if he's in the stoppage, 9 times out of 10, he's going to touch the ball. And just in 2013, one of the things that Fremantle have been able to do is generate those hit-outs into clearances, an enormous advantage to the Dockers. But around the ground, Pike and Mumford will be more dangerous. So again, it's the hit-out part of the ruck work is that overwhelming in the Dockers' favour. But he's a unique talent, Sandlands, because he's just so big.
Well, which ruck pair do you favour most?
I think Sandlands, only because there's going to be 70 or 80 stoppages a day, and if he's in there, he'll get his hand to 9 out of 10 of them, and if he can direct them to the Fremantle advantage, as he did against Geelong a couple of weeks ago, that's a fantastic weapon.
Well, it's time for your tip now. Who's going to progress to the grand final?
Well, I'm going to stick to the obvious. The team that had the rest last week, Fremantle, I think Fremantle will beat Sydney and progress to the grand final the following week.
Well, thanks once again, Lee, and thank you for joining us on Lethal's Last Word. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week with a big preview of the 2013 grand final.